Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. This is the High Caliber Man podcast with myself, Hugh, and this week I'm joined by Lady Esi from Conscious FM, from the More Knowledge Show. How you doing, Lady Esi?
I'm doing very well. How you doing?
I'm good. Been looking forward to chopping it up. We ain't spoken in a while.
No, we haven't. Yeah.
Yeah, we got an interesting topic to get into. And I thought about it from a kind of psychological point of view and mental health point of view, but also just from a social point of view. And it's to do with the usage of pornography in today's society. In particular, there's an article written by a psychosexual psychotherapist and relationship coach, Silver Neves. He wrote one article in Psychology Today back in 2021, and it was entitled "The Problems with Pornography." And so I thought, topical, relevant. Why not get into it with a life coach and radio presenter, broadcast journalist? So yeah, welcome to the podcast, and I guess we could just jump in with both feet.
Both feet in to this topic.
Get it all started. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
It was a very interesting article. I hadn't he raised some really good points.
was there anything that definitely caught your attention that you can think of off the top of your head before we get into the main talking points? But what was it that
I think it was the ethical porn. I was like, what's ethical and porn put together? Really? Okay.
Okay, that seems like a bit of an oxymoronic kind of,
it was like porn, ethical, really? Okay. But I guess I get the point because I kind of obviously started to Google it more. I'm like, I get what he's talking about. Porn is here to stay, right? So how do you make it better for those that are involved in the adult industry?
Interesting.
It's here, isn't it? It's here. It's not.
Look like
You're not going to
go anywhere. Whether you love it,
it's not going to go anywhere.
It's not going anywhere. Yeah. But that question does come to mind, right? Good place to start.
Yeah.
Is it possible to access ethical porn? What's your thoughts about it?
I didn't know that you could, but apparently you can. If there is ethical, where it's made to make sure everyone involved in making the porn film or whatever they're making is treated well. So it's about upping the industry standards in that whole industry of adult entertainment porn. So everyone's treated well and there's boundaries in place. And so there are sites now that focus on making sure. And I guess sometimes porn is very male orientated towards men, but ethical porn kind of tries to look towards what females may want to see in a porn style rather than what men may, because some porn is really directed at men, right?
And I think the majority of pornography is made for male consumption, and it is very much about the male gaze and the male libido.
It is, but ethical porn tries to balance that a little bit and try and take away that dehumanization of women that mainstream porn can do, or the internet porn.
So he made a distinction between legal and illegal as a kind of way of saying ethical.
Yes.
When you were saying like
illegal,
people are getting treated well, and I started to think about lunch break and workers' rights, but I guess that's what he's alluding to, right? That
because I've seen some documentaries about people that started in adult entertainment industries. Like there's some interesting documentary of people that were like very notorious in their day, and they talk about how they were dealt with in the industry. And I think that's what it means. It's more legal, where there's proper contracts in place, they get paid, they get money from the films they've made. So yeah, I think it's that more legal side of the industry where people are contracted to work. So it's just work for them. It's not, where you've got the illegal porn where people's videos that they're making in the privacy of their own home ends up on some download illegal site somewhere.
Right. So that's an interesting aspect. If I can just jump in there to see if I can get you right, so he's making a distinction between the porn where people are, for example, trafficked, pressured, forced, enslaved at some, in more extreme circumstances.
Yes.
It's against their will. They're under duress, right?
Yes.
And different from those people where, for example, because females obviously are going to be more vulnerable than males in that respect.
It's all that porn that
have agency to decide I want to be a part of this. Whatever anybody else thinks of it, even if I find it reprehensible overall, they've made that choice, right? That's their free will, and it's different, and that's going to be different ethically from those ones where people have been
forced
under
into
threats
it.
of violence or some sort of duress.
Yeah, all the ones where they've been trafficked, where someone's been taken from wherever and they're forced to work under really horrible circumstances. So yeah, that's where the distinction is. And also those porn subjects that are very disgusting, that aren't really porn, but people call it porn. But yeah, that's other stuff, the dirty stuff, the really underground horrible
the
stuff.
real nasty stuff. All right, and so what about the idea though that we in society have got a bit of a double standard going on, because we say on one level, right, that sex is just an act, right? There's nothing to it. It's just sex like anything else, right? It's a normal part of the journey. So we don't morally judge people who are street workers, prostitutes, people like that, right? We don't judge them. They're just providing a service. But at the same time, we're unethical porn, or some people are against porn altogether because they say the risk of people being trafficked and enslaved and pressured to do the work. But he uses the argument about chocolate and saying that there's many parts of West Africa where people are trafficked, people are pressured, people are under almost like enslaved producing chocolate. But we're not so worried about ethical chocolate. In fact, that doesn't even the conversation doesn't even arise.
Exactly. I mean, and also Congo, like all the devices that we use, the bits that go in our phones and stuff.
Is it Colton and etc.?
Yeah. So I mean, the thing is, there is, and I mean, obviously people do try. It's all the workers like do all the people that make all the products that we have now. You've got shea butter and everything. Again, are the women treated well? So yes, you do have. But I think, like he says, the thing about porn is, I think from historically, if you think about how porn has always been a subject that people find uncomfortable, because it is about sex, it's about pleasure, it's about fantasies, and it's an uncomfortable subject. You've got the religious side of things where it was prohibited. You've got the moral conflicts. So I think that's what it is. There's so much, porn is seen as anything that's seen as illegal, immoral, not great, whatever, it draws more attention.
Okay.
It draws more attention because we know porn has always been around, like from the beginning of time. Even if you were to read Victorian works, it was around. Even some Shakespeare stuff probably had some kind of, you've had your books, you've had your magazines, you've had your plays. So you've always had some level of it. But because it's sex is always that subject that no one wants to talk about. But everyone is always available. But no one wants to talk about it.
Almost like saying sex is something that's on nearly everybody's minds, but nobody wants to talk about it. Basically,
no one wants to talk about it, and that's where that's why porn, porn fills that gap, unfortunately, because if people aren't having a conversation about healthy sex, healthy conversations about it, great sex education. Who has sex education in school? It was what I mean. That's probably how most young boys get their education, right? From porn, like their uncle or older male relative. If they find it from the magazine, from the male relative, and that's how they get their education about how you have sex. And that's not the right way of having the education.
Yeah, I hope we can look into that a little bit deeper later on, but about porn and it being used as a tool for sex education. But I want to come back to something related to misogyny, right? Because porn seems to be so polarized, and you've got people on one side that say, like, for example, you've got feminists on one side saying it's the objectification or the sexual objectification of women, it's the oppression, it's the misrepresentation of the female image made for these hypersexual patriarchal men. And then you've got other, maybe like more younger wave feminists who might say, or those being influenced by feminist ideas, who says, look, women are empowered, they have a choice, just like the girls who carry the ring cards around in scantily clad outfits, or the ones that do the show the signposts at motor racing with hardly any clothes on. So too, the porn star is a woman, a businesswoman, a woman on her own mission with autonomy. What's your thought?
Again, I mean, I'm on the second side. Though I did study feminism, but in my heyday, in my politics degree, it's always been about choice. Though, as like I said, if it's ethical in a sense where a woman is in control, she's made a decision, it's the agency and autonomy to do whatever it is. It is where it crosses that line. But if you think about society anyway.
So where's the line? Where's the line? What line? Where is this line? Tell me about this line.
I don't know. There's one line in it, but no one knows this line. But there's a line. But when you're talking about misogyny and anything else, porn reflects society anyway, because a lot of things are sexualized that are not pornographic. but it's still sexualized. If you think about how sexualized things are now anyway, where women are shown in not a great way, misogyny is out there. So you don't have to look to porn to see the negative side of how women are portrayed in society anyway. For example, like example of breastfeeding is a very natural thing.
Pretty
But
much. Yeah, pretty much.
but over here, if you see a woman pull out a breast to feed her baby, like, oh, everyone starts getting all, why? A baby needs to eat. I've traveled to other countries where a woman will pull out her breast and feed her baby, and no one bats an eyelid. Like, it's not even, the baby needs to eat, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the breast has become a sexualized thing, part of the female anatomy.
Well, it's
where
always
it also,
been sexual. It's always
it's
been sexualized.
but that's my point. So you don't
But
need
you're
porn
saying that in
to,
this society, it's only sexualized.
yeah, in society are very sexualized. But what I'm saying is you don't need porn to dehumanize women's bodies. That's what I'm saying. We don't need porn is just a reflection of society, isn't it? Because in society anyway, it is already, women have, you know, there's negative images for women because of what we see on TV anyway. Because if you think about some images, I've seen some adverts, some programs, you're like, rah, that's a little bit like music videos. How some of the music videos from back in the day, they weren't porn, but some of them were, yeah, some were terrible. So, you know, so although we're blaming porn, we've got to look at society as a whole and the images that are available. And, you know, some young girls and some young boys are actually watching them from now. The internet, some things that pop up in your timeline if you're not careful.
So then you mentioned the videos from back in the day, right? And I'm going to ask you from the context of culture, right? You got popular culture, very influenced by Black Western culture, right? And so I'm going to ask you this in the context of being a Black woman. Do you think those videos, those hypersexualized videos, the Hype Williams, etc., those producers,
the Two Live Crew, the videos were,
pelvis and chest region, pelvis gyration,
they were
have
very
they been damaging to the Black woman's, I don't know, public image in the West in particular, not globally, but in the West.
They've added to it. I don't think it's the only thing, but I believe it's added. I would say yes, added to it. But I would say there's always probably been that stereotypes of Black women anyway. Black women's bodies have always been over sexualized but this goes back to enslavement in a sense. So Black women's bodies have always been over sexualized, and those videos I don't think helped.
I think women in general in this society have been sexualized regardless, but I definitely
women have
images
always,
and images that were kind of came out of the era of the transatlantic slave trade didn't.
Yeah, those images, you know, you had Sarah Bateman, who was put into a museum. You know, if you know the story about her, like she was put into a museum to be overlooked at because of her body. Do you understand? So you had that was back in the 1800s or 1900s. So what I'm saying is it's always been, that's always, women's bodies have always been over sexualized, and we've always had this issue. So porn, just as I said, for me reflects society, but on a more deeper level.
Right. What about the idea? What about the idea? I'm going to tie it into that question about the image. Do you think there's been a possibility of a kind of like hyper self-objectification, so that some women or some pockets of society, they kind of have been influenced by porn and erotic images, and there's nothing bad about sex, right? In fact, it's probably the greatest, if not one of the greatest thing that, you know, humanity's got, right? In the right context. But out of
in the right context,
but out of that context, is there a kind of hypersexualization where many young girls may not see a value beyond that there's what they can provide to the male gaze and for male desires?
Yes, definitely, because again, it comes down to sexual education. It comes down to how sex is portrayed in society as a whole. If anyone's read Napoleon Hill's book, which has gone out of my head right now, but he talks about sex transmission,
Who,
sexual
who's that?
transmutation.
Who's the author of that?
Napoleon Hill.
The one that
Everyone knows.
Think and Grow Rich.
Yes. There's a chapter about sexual because sex is, he says, is one of the major emotions, but there's a chapter about sexual transmission or transmission or something
like
like
transmutation or something like with energy.
Transmission, yeah, where you transmute energy, because sex is energy, isn't it?
Yes.
So it's just how sex has been parceled up and sent out to the masses. It's made to be a dirty thing. It's made to be horrible. It's made to be a thing. And if sex education improves, then yeah, we would probably not, porn wouldn't be needed as much, if that makes sense, or the portrayal of women would be improved. But sex is very much about it's you know what I mean. I don't know if anyone, I don't know if it would be your sex education from your parents, but you know what I mean, it was probably very non-existent. And in some households it is not spoken about at all. It's just like
it's
the message for a lot
it's a bit of a thing.
Yes, the message for a lot of young girls I hear was just don't come back pregnant.
Wow.
But how do you get pregnant? Don't let no boy touch you.
Yeah.
Okay. And that is the message that a young girl gets. And then you're suddenly having young boys, like especially I guess teenage girls, once you're going through puberty and your body's changing, then you got boys or even some dirty old men sort of looking at you and talking to you, and then now, but at home you're being told just don't let no one touch you, but you haven't been prepared to, you haven't had that conversation. But then you're out there and says you're literally, girls are thrown to the wolves because at home you haven't been told anything, but just don't let them touch you. And then you're out there and you got people ogling you, and then you got looking at images, and then now you're like what do you do? And then young boys as well, they haven't been told how to be respectful of a woman's, appreciative of a woman's body, how to appreciate of your own body, how to appreciate their sexual acts. But everyone's just thrown out there to the walls to try and figure out how to make it
young
up.
boys to find out about sex, right?
Yeah.
Than it is to find out about sex within the context of emotionality, of
but then
the psychological and the intimate aspect of like relationships and sex being a part of a relationship. The mechanical I think is easy. Speaking from my own experience growing up in the 80s, we did sex education at school, probably secondary school, but by the time I got to secondary school, I could have graduated from that sex ed class, because I'm the youngest sibling of four siblings with three older brothers, so
new stuff already.
It wasn't rocket science. You just sit down and be quiet when teenagers are talking, and hopefully they forget you're there, and you hear a lot of stuff that you probably shouldn't be hearing at a young age. So,
and I guess that's where the issue is, because I guess when teenagers are starting to talk about sex, they're not, like I said, they're not told the connection. They're not told about the problems that come as a result of starting to have sex at a young age, or the result of watching too much porn. Like when porn becomes an addiction and it replaces.
Can it become addiction? I hope we get to.
It is,
because there's some argument to say there isn't any
of course it's an addiction.
Scientifically substantial research to suggest that
it's probably the addictive behavior.
Porn is addictive. Say again?
If someone's watching it more than once a week, if someone's watching it on an everyday basis, I think they're slightly addicted to it.
But that's the argument. That's the argument that actually this gentleman makes the argument in this Sinful Needs, right? He makes his argument that he suggests that there isn't any substantial research, academic research to suggest that porn is actually addiction, although we use that word a lot in society now because of our fears or discontent around porn usage. But he said at most it can be associated with compulsive sexual behavior disorder. It's
addiction. It's just like when someone needs to go have a cigarette, they're addicted to nicotine. They're addicted to the dopamine that watching sex gives them. They might be addicted to the high it gives them. So
some people, I think I say people, right? But I think some men use sex sometimes all right, I'm not going to say the term addictive, but I'm going to stick with it in a compulsive fashion, right? But it's really a way to address, to self-soothe, to use that kind of clinical terminology.
Self-soothe. Right? I hear you, but
self-medicate, right?
What about those that have,
like how some people self-harm, for example, just to make this point. Like you might have a young teenage girl struggling with certain emotional issues. She may self-harm as a way to kind of regulate her emotions, right? And you may have a young boy, I'm just using it, a teenage boy, for example, who may you know, really use a lot of porn, really access a lot of porn at a teenage, but out of a way of managing certain other difficult emotions that he may be experiencing. But it's not really the attraction to the pornography, but it's the kind of like,
Isn't it the feeling that it gives you that you're addicted to the feeling?
could be. What's your thoughts?
Because isn't addiction when you kind of want to engage, a persistent and intense urge to act, to have certain behaviors, engage in certain behaviors. So if you have an intense and persistent urge to keep watching porn, then you're addicted.
No,
that's what addiction.
But also for addiction, it's got to interrupt your life, isn't it? It's got to
impact. But some people it does though. For some people, it's interrupted because they ain't doing that, and that's why watching porn. There are some men that have a problem.
Really?
Yeah, there are people that have a problem with porn. There are some men that do have a problem with it. They probably don't have relationships because they're just watching porn all the time. So there are some that are very extreme where they do.
Do they go somewhere for help? Because you know, when you think about addictions, you think about crackheads, you know, somebody that's addicted to coke or heroin, they check in somewhere. Where are these porn addicts going? What are they doing? Where did they go? Who are they? Where do they meet? When do they meet?
I said earlier, I watched a documentary about someone who works in the adult entertainment industry, and he was talking about these guys that they used to meet. They used to come. They were addicted. I remember him talking about, and that's why I'm saying I remember him talking about meeting fans that were addicted to porn. Like literally, that's all they did. You know what I mean? That's all they watched. They didn't go out and do anything. Porn was their life. That's all they did. So it was a kind of a dangerous addiction. So yes, there are some people that are.
All right. Talk to me about the dangers. Talk to me about the dangers. I want to hear about young men and porn miseducating or framing their views on women,
framing it
their relationships with women or their attitudes towards women, as well as their sexual relations with women. Talk to me about
probably
that.
not being able to form proper relationships. I would say for some men, they may not be able to form a proper emotional attachment. I would probably say having a false perception of the performance side of things, because obviously porn is acting, right? It's entertainment. So probably believing that they should be going on for like, maybe it interrupts their self-worth or their self-belief in themselves, because thinking they should be able to go on for half an hour when that's unrealistic, you know, in a sense, probably trying to so it's that false sense of
so false expectations based on a kind of
false
fantasy model, but they actually take that as a teaching guide, and that's what
the fantasy model. It's acting. It ain't going on like this. And if like obviously in a porn situation, the woman's the noises that are made, you know, is for entertainment, right? So if a young boy is going, she ain't making them kind of noises, am I not doing it right?
So the idea that a woman must be screaming and shrieling,
like woman must be
for it to be an enjoyable experience, and if she isn't making those sounds like the lady in the movie, I say lady, maybe in air speech marks, but the woman in the movie, if she's not acting like that, then maybe the young man's thinking, I'm doing something wrong, or I am not doing something right.
And he's not. You know what I mean? It's just you haven't learned how to do it. You're not communicating, and I think it stops them communicate. And I think that's the wrong side, is you stop communicating with the partner to go, what do you like, what don't you like. So part of having a healthy sexual relationship is you're asking each other what works, what doesn't work, what do you like, what don't you like, and you having that constant communication. But if your education is porn, you're going to miss out that communication and learning on how to actually satisfy a woman, rather than going out there and doing your thing and go, I'm that man in it, I just got to go do this, rather than going, what does a woman need? Because it's very much about, the wrong side is the man just getting what he wants from it, and not thinking a woman's an active participant in this.
So women are objectified in porn then?
In a sense, because that's how it's going to come out.
Object, men are the actors, not actors in like theatrical, but men are the ones with agency, and the woman is object just to be used for this person to act out on, basically.
Do you mean because so I think if the guide is watching porn or watching those magazines, and I think then, and if young people don't have that other side of education to go find out the bits they need to find out, then that is going to be their model for it. So they're always going to have a very disappointed sexual relationships, because they're always going to be disappointed because they've got this high expectation of what they think it should look like, and the reality is not going to be like that. So it's going to cause that disappointment. In a sense, I think that's the downside. And like you said, it's always looking at women in a particular way. Like, you know, women must be always on. Women's bodies don't work like that. You
On
gotta
as
do
in
a bit
turned
more.
on, right? You mean turned on? You mean in that
Yeah,
sense?
because in the porn, the woman looks like she's always turned on. But again, if you don't know the back thing, there's a lot of work that goes on to make it look. Do you understand? But if you're going by that model, you know, she just turns up and she's ready.
So,
It don't work like
okay.
that.
She's ready. So I'm gonna bring it back to education. I'm gonna see if I can tie this kind of like question in, right? You have the religious conservatives, the rabbi, right? The priest and preacher, pastor, the imam, the sheikh, right? From the monotheistic religions of kind of like Western religions, they say, you have very like strong, clear moral guidelines around things like sex before marriage and access of things like pornography, right? So they're very clear guidelines. But my question is, I guess, almost in the context of how would a young couple gain knowledge or insight, right, so that they are able to navigate and not have to encounter a sexual anxiety around kind of like moving into that, you know, a couple, the young people get married, for example, and they have no experience. Where are they supposed to gain information from? Sexology, eretology, etc., etc.
They can, if they you've got the Kama Sutra.
Apart from accessing porn, and nobody's willing to
the
talk
Kama Sutra.
Okay.
You know, you've got tantric. You've got people that do them tantric workshops. You know, so talking to each other. What do you like? Actually talking to each other. You know, I think communication.
That sounds easy, though. That sounds easy. Two people
that's
have
literally
never
what you have to
engaged
do.
in any sort of
I think they can.
sexual activity. They've been left on their wedding night, and people have said to them, "Well, go on then, crack on then. See you later."
I think they can explore. Like they can just be curious and wonder, does this work for you? You mean just like speak to each other and explore. You know.
So you said the Kama Sutra, but I'm saying, don't we need? Or maybe I'm asking you a question the wrong way, but I know this gentleman mentions in the article.
I don't.
People access porn for education, but he's saying that it's not pornography's fault; it's society's fault.
It is,
right? Because they haven't produced enough legitimate sex education that's interesting and relevant enough that young people who are inexperienced, or even older people who just want to up their game, right, can access. So they're kind of left with nothing else but to access porn. What do you think?
But there is. I'm saying there is. I said you've got your Kama Sutra and Tantric. So there are stuff you can access if you wanted to. So there is information out there if people look for it. But I think a young couple will never really be not having anything, because I said society is sexualized. So there's always going to be those programs where you've got kind of sexual images, whether or not it's explicitly sexually. So they will never go into their wedding night very naive. They would have been. They've already been there. The seeds have already been planted. Because just being in society, seeds are planted. You watch things, you hear things. You know, even some of our soaps. You know, what I mean, some of our programs that are then the 9 o'clock watershed moment. After 9 o'clock, you know, it's more adult content, right? You know, films they've watched, books they've read. You know, you had your Mills and Boons back in the day. Those type of 50 Shades of Grey. So they will never go in naively. They will have an idea because the seeds have already been planted from a long time. They may have even been hearing relatives in the wars being thin. So they would never go in not knowing.
Okay.
It's communication. That's how they will learn how to talk to each other. Like, what do you like? There's books written. There's a book that I know. I remember reading once. It said she comes first.
I know that book.
Do you mean? Yeah, there's
sex. There's woman's anatomy of arousal. There's topics. There's books out there. But what I'm saying is that people tend to know about porn first, though. That's what I'm saying. People tend to know more about porn. They probably don't know the difference between what's the term sexology means and what's the difference between the term eretology, for example. You know what I mean? One just talking about sex as a behavior, and one talking about sex within the context of love.
I don't think everyone goes to porn first. I think there's a certain demographic society that goes to porn first. Most of the people don't. I don't think everyone does.
The contention is that most people do. Most young people do. That's their first encounter with sexual information.
It might be more men.
Telling them something on the playground. Now
it might be more
in
boys
the old days, it used to be
girls.
a top shelf magazine, but now it's like, how can I put it? Every young person that has a smartphone, Yeah.
I mean, maybe this society, but I think before it was more probably boys that probably got the porn than girls. I don't think girls went to porn first. Girls would normally go and speak to an older sister or an older relative about it. I think maybe boys, maybe. I think it might be more of a boy thing.
All right. I got a
Male
question
thing,
for you. I got a question for you
rather
on
than
that.
females.
I got a question for you on that, because there's a billion wicked ways, right? The research, the Google research that says that more women access porn than men online, right? But it's a type of what we classify as pornography. So going back to what your point was, that the girls would read Mills and Boone.
Yeah, you can read a
The
book.
girls
Yeah,
would
read it,
read
like,
Lady Chatterley's Lover.
and remember,
That's
and
also considered porn, right? But the boys would, in the old days,
it's,
have looked at the
it's kind
magazine.
of it's kind of erotica, isn't it? Erotica kind of gives you a different thing. And generally, in the girls' magazines back in the day, you had your columns. So those columns are where you learnt from. You'd have those questions that you put in about any sex questions. So we had those magazines that you went to, the agony aunts, and you asked a question, and you read them. So you didn't need to go to porn.
So it sounds like a different rites of passage almost.
It's a different rites of passage, yeah, because because girls talk. Like there was questions you'd ask the older sister. You always had a friend with an older sister, or a fun auntie in it that would pass on a message and tell you what you need to know. And you'll get those magazines that you go, Women's Weekly. You got this. I'm having a problem. Sexual problem page. Dear Deidre. Them kind of things, and you would have someone saying, "I'm having this problem. What do I do?" And it'll be laid out for you. So I said it's a demographic thing. I don't think not everyone went to porn. That's not where they went to go learn.
Okay. Yeah, no, I hear that. Maybe I'm just thinking a lot because I'm thinking from a male perspective in terms of.
Yeah, so it might be more of a male perspective, like you said. But now, with the age of internet, everybody is probably more exposed to porn. Whether they look for it or not is different, but it might be timeline depending on who you're following. Things might pop up in your timeline. So parents have to be more intentional about the restrictions they put on their young people's phone.
Is there a pornification of society though with the internet now? Because I'm thinking of
there is.
of Nicki Minaj, and I'm thinking of
I mean, what's that song? Is it right? What?
And there's a whole host of male rappers I could name, but I just want to name those two young ladies for the moment. And like,
I mean, I saw a video the other day, and the guy did the lyrics for they banned, what song they banned? They banned I can't remember what song it was. The lyrics were the guy did a video where he had the WAP lyrics against I Want to Take You Outside, that Christmas song.
Okay.
Let me take you home, whatever. And the guy did the lyrics of, because they banned that song saying it was whatever, and they did the lyrics of both songs. Oh my gosh, the lyrics of like, whoa, like damn, in comparison. So there's songs from back in the day where people going, this song needs to be banned because it's blah, blah, blah. But you're like, some of the songs of today are a little bit, whoa.
Yeah. It's just the internet age which keeps me
internet
thinking.
Age.
There's an old poem from one of our famous cultural influencers, O'Shea Jackson, otherwise known the modern day philosopher known as Ice Cube to his fans, right? And he says a line in one of his songs about basically he says, "I'm in your house without a key," and how expletive up that would be. And it makes me think about that ideas and information come through the front door via the mobile phone to the young people. So are there elevated risk?
Yeah, because I mean, if you think about, I love 90s slow jams. Like, think about the 90s slow jams, and back in the day, there was a lot of innuendo. Like even soca, I love soca as well. There's a lot of innuendo.
Oh Lord.
But there was never really explicitly, but there was a lot of innuendo. So you kind of it was your imagination to kind of left to the imagination kind of thing of. But with the internet age, it's boom, straight up in your face, right? And sometimes you get sent a video and you're like, oh my gosh, was there no warning here? Because now people can send you stuff like to anywhere, to any of your way if you're available. You get sent a video and you just have to be like, you watched this and sent this to me with no warning. What is this now?
You're an adult, you're a grown woman, so can you imagine
what's
circulating on TikTok and among young people?
Do you understand? So it's like it is the content. They'll go, So you do have to put your parental locks on the young people, but they can get past it. So yeah, it's like there's so much out there now, and not all of it is what do you call it, as the guy in the article said, not all of it is ethical, not all of it is legal. Some of it is the underground stuff. Some of it is the revenge porn. You know, some of it is some poor couple doing their thing between privately, and next you know it's available on some website somewhere.
Revenge, you said revenge porn, where
Revenge porn, you know what I mean? That's
after
very
the end of the
dangerous.
relationship, they expose
Yeah.
of a
Oh
partner
my
out
gosh.
business. This is you know,
And
nightmare, like a person's
and it's there.
worst nightmare to be exposed like that.
But the problem is, you've got also, if you think about a lot of young girls and boys now, they could be starting a relationship with somebody and the person goes, send me a picture, innit?
Wow. Listen, Lady Esi, we have to do a part 2. On that point, I want to pause the conversation there. We're going to have to do a part 2. I'd love to invite you back. Much appreciated for your time.
Thank you so
hope
much.
To speak to you soon. I hope the listeners stay tuned for the part 2. Speak to you later. Take care.
Bye.